Now it's 5:30 and we are going to start the webinar. Hello everyone and welcome to today's webinar on your pathway to homeownership, the introduction of affordable housing program with BMO. I am Sepide Karimi-Sierrani, the Business and Housing Program Associate at San Pablo Economic Development Corporation with my colleague Aurora. Before we get started, here are a few housekeeping items. This webinar is being recorded. A recording will be available on our website. Any resources mentioned during the presentation will also be available on our website. Everyone's mics are muted and cameras are turned off. If you are having issues with audio, you may need to click on the webinar screen to enable audio. We welcome questions. Please use the Q&A box located at the bottom of your screen to submit questions, and we will answer them at the end of the presentation. So the mission of San Pablo Economic Development Corporation is to act as the catalyst for equitable economic opportunity. The SPDC offers workshops, training, and classes for businesses, entrepreneurs, and individuals. To support advancement, we focus on employment training and support, business resources and access to capital, and homeownership, which we are going to discuss on this webinar. And this webinar was possible with the help of our wonderful partner, BMO. We are grateful for their partnership and collaboration with SPDC. Our presenters today are Ms. Emma Biggie from BMO and myself, Sepide Karimi-Sierrani from San Pablo EDC, which will explain our down payment assistance programs later. Now I stop sharing my screen and invite Emma to share her slides.
Thank you, Sepide. So, good evening, everybody. Welcome to our San Pablo EDC's homeownership workshop. My name is Emma Biggie. I'm from BMO, Bank of Montreal. I believe a lot of people at this moment already know who BMO is because our frequency of the advertisement is really shared. We landed in the West Coast. So BMO is the Canadian bank, is a Bank of Montreal, has over 200 years of history. BMO purchased the Bank of West. So that's why we are now the prior Bank of West become a BMO. So that's some background information I want to share. Now, back to our workshop tonight, I would like to share some information regarding homeownership, especially to prepare everybody thinking to purchase a home, either is a first-time home buyer or the person wants to re-enter the home ownership, the market to purchase the property. We are stay on quite a few points on the lenders piece tonight. So we're not going to run the A to Z, but definitely gave you some insight about how the lender, from a lender perspective, how we look at it is homeowners qualification, and also for the home buyers to understand the lender's position. Without further ado, I'm going to share my screen, start talking about mortgages. Is that okay to see the screen? This front size is okay? Yeah, okay. Forgive me as this slides we prepared, but as a PDF file, it's not a really PowerPoint. So if you feel it's too small, please let me know. So here are a few reasons want to purchasing a property, and especially want to purchasing that property, we will call that home. What's the home concept is, first of all, we're going to using that as our primary residency. That's a major thing. So we call the home. A lot of people say, well, I purchased a property, is going to rent it out, or maybe using that for recreation. Those are not technically straight concept of home. So the home is raise the family and also to develop the community. So there's variable reasons to say we want to purchase a home and to gain the home ownership. Well, the bottom line, what I want to everybody walk out this room is to say, if you want to owning the house, not just to put a roof over the head. The major thing is we want to start owning the home, building the wealth. And the home is eventually become your personal bank. So thinking that way will help us to plan better for the future with this property. Now, of course, tonight we're going to identify a lot of things related to this home ownership concept. First thing, talking about the home ownership, we need to, majority of the people purchasing the home nowadays will we consider is, say, borrow money or using other people's resources to help us to achieve what we plan to do of purchasing the home. So once we stepped into this borrow money concept, we have to learn how to negotiate, how to communicate with the lender. And talking to the lender, we're going to import this concept is a mortgage. What is the mortgage? Mortgage is the agreement between the home buyer and the lender, is agreement for lender lend the money on the property the buyer wants to purchase, and the buyer promised the lender to return the money borrowed against the house. So here has talking about the relationship, because the buyer will borrow money from the lender. There's a business relationship there. That's the first thing. The second thing is there is a term in this relationship. The mortgage has a term. We're not going to borrow the money is to have this debt or liability forever. There is a term. Normally, lender is going to structure the agreement into a term. What we learned is either is a 30-year, 15-year, 10-year, all those terms. And also in this contract or in this relationship, we also have a cost. The cost is cost to using the money, which is the famous term is interest. What's the interest? The interest is the lender charged the money for the buyer or borrower borrow the money to using that money. So there's a quite different layers of concept involved in this mortgage or lending business. And also the last piece is there's a collateral value. We as a consumer, everybody in this room, we as a consumer, we pledge our obligation or responsibility to pay back the money we borrowed to purchase the house in exchange the full ownership of the house. So with that pledge, we need to fulfill our responsibility to pay back the money on time. And that's also another relationship. And the last piece is the collateral, which is the house. So there's a little bit of intertwined couple of relationship, a couple of concept. Let's peel off some layers and really dive in. What is we're really looking into when we stepped into this relationship. So if go back to the first one, if consumer comes in, ask for money, borrow money to buy the house, we stepped into the mortgage, right? The mortgage itself is not just the money and the interest rate. We also involved other obligations, which is may not be the lender's piece, but will be the borrower or buyer's responsibility. That's related to the property tax and homeowner insurance. Why those two are getting into this relationship? Because those two are also involved this collateral value, which is the house, or collateral asset, which is the house. Because once we purchase the house need to have a protection. That's the insurance come into the play. And also, once we purchase the house, we also need to pay the government for the ownership, the taxes. This is not a sales tax. This is a property tax, which is ongoing with the ownership. So if we own the house, we got to pay the property tax. This is not just a one-time event or one-time, one-off expenses. This is ongoing. Why we mention this or emphasize this? Because all this type of relationship and responsibility is going to last for some time. As I earlier mentioned, in this relationship, there's a term. The term is not 1 day or 1 month or 1 year. It can be 30 years. So technically 30 years is a relatively long period. So prepare for the homeownership, to prepare for that long term, definitely we need to consider all the expenses involved in this homeownership. In other words, homeownership is very good to own the house because we build up our personal wealth and have the legacy to carry on. But on the other side, definitely do not take this too lightly because there's so much responsibility. And also, they are financial liabilities on our day in, day out basis. So that's why it's very important we understand what is the mortgage, the relationship, the cost, and the concept involved. Now, talking about the purchasing the house, we also need to look at it, the cost, not only cost to borrow money, but also other costs we got coming into the play. One of the major costs, which is a one-time cost can be, but will be a very expensive, which is the down payment. This is a very popular concept. A lot of people thinking about purchasing a house, the first thing come to the mind will be, where should I have a down payment? And how much I can put down for this transaction. Why this piece is become very popular and also be significant can be a weight element for the buyers to consider, because down payment is going to be our consumers' personal investment in this transaction. Nowadays, there are some help for us to resources or sourcing to get the down payment to helping us to do the purchasing. But still, even with the assistance, a lot of time we're still facing the future responsibility. For example, down payment can be a grant money, which is money for free. We don't need to pay back. But the majority of the down payment system and program actually is going to be a liability asking us to pay back in a certain time and certain condition. So with that said, is maybe short time we won't consider is a big responsibility, but for a long time it is. So with that said, we need to pay attention to how much down payment we need to have and how much we can sourcing this type of down payment to help us to purchasing the house. The other thing we also need to consider is the cost is transaction itself. This part, a lot of people won't pay too much attention until they see the lender send out a disclosure. They will say, wow, there's so much cost. Is that something we can get help? Because technically, compared to large money you borrow to purchase the house, the cost of a transaction actually is very minimal, but it still is a sizable amount. So I want to give you industry standard is normally we should prepare between 3 to 5% of the purchasing price as the closing cost altogether. So let me run this. if we have a $500,000 purchasing price, what is minimum prepared for a closing cost or a cost of transaction? If we say it's a 3%. I pause for a second. So 500,000, 3%, that's going to be 15,000. So technically, if I borrow 450,000 compared to versus the 15,000, the 450,000 is a large money to borrow. But if we're saying is one transaction cost us 15,000, and that's quite a sizable money there. So for that, we do need to prepare for where we can find that money, either out of our saving or out of using the certain reserves, and also maybe find the help to cover that cost. And what are those costs is going to cover? The cost is going to cover the fees involved this all transaction. A lot of people coming in to say, hey, Emma, I don't think that's going to be the case because I heard my relatives told me they purchased their house, they didn't spend a dime. Well, in reality, the situation can be looked like that. But my question is, do you really believe there's no cost involved? Which is, no, there's always a cost involved because cost of labor. That's the first thing in the world is if something happened, there's a cost of labor. So since there's a cost of labor and there's going to have a fee, there's going to have a charges. But my saying to give everybody is, here is the thing, cost is always there, but who is paying the cost? That can be discussed and that can be negotiated. And that's something is, as a consumer, we need to be mindful. We need to open eyes, open ears, and try to open up that conversation with the agent, with your loan officer, with the other service provider, and to see there are some certain ways to save the money, to cutting down the cost of the transaction. So bottom line, cost is always there. Who can help to pay the cost? Let's discuss it. There's other things also involved. Some certain things involved this the lending transaction, talking about discount point or mortgage points or private mortgage insurance. This type of a concept is there, but is not happening all the time. In other words, is not everybody will encounter this similar situation. What is a private mortgage insurance? Private mortgage insurance is if the person doesn't have enough down payment, which is the industry threshold is 20%. If you do not have enough 20% down payment, the lender is going to ask a buyer to buy the insurance for the lender to lend more money to the buyer. So the insurance is purchased to protect the lender because the lender will issue a larger loans. So that's called private mortgage insurance. Mortgage insurance is to insure the mortgage, insure the lender. But who is paying that? Buyer is paying that. Borrower is paying that. So for paying the fees consideration, buyer probably is always thinking, are there any way I can minimize that insurance? Well, for minimize that insurance, either we're looking at the program doesn't have a mortgage insurance. The second thing is, can we outsourcing the down payment altogether to meet the threshold? So those are the ways can minimize that So in that case, we can avoid it, the private mortgage insurance. That's why I said mortgage insurance is a concept, is the scenario, but it's not everybody's scenario. It's not everybody's situation. Now, the next thing is discount point. What is discount point? Discount point is the pricing tool, is a pricing resources for buyer and lender to negotiate the price. In other words, is the price on the same loan can a little bit higher, a little bit lower. So for the buyer can negotiate the price, will give you the leverage. You may can gain some cash, the points to cover the other cost. So in other words, a lender can help you to pay some the cost by adjusting the pricing. So those type of things are in this transaction, but it's not always everybody's situation. Well, that's something is basic about the lender, the mortgages. Now let's move to how to prepare for a mortgage. This is the part actually prepare for the mortgage. I would consider is take a consumer a much longer time than to get a mortgage. Why? Because get a mortgage, normally we have a date, we have a time, we have a term. We can get a mortgage within 30 days, within 60 days. But to get that point, to get that ready to get that mortgage, we do need to prepare quite a lot ahead of time. And sometimes this ahead of a period can be longer than a year or maybe 2 to 5 years. Why? Because do we set a budget to save money? And do we have a plan for overview about owning the house in the future? Finances plans. And then look at our credit. Our credit is our credit ready to pick up the mortgage? Because our credit is the big leverage tool for the lender to make decision on the home buyers, whether they are a credible buyer to borrow this much money. So there are a lot of consideration there. And also we got to consider is to taking on the house, yes, is a great thing to own the house, but also on the other side, as I mentioned earlier, is a big responsibility. Are we ready mentally, financially, and even physically? Because this is not just a one short time movement. For example, if we say, well, I can get some money saved up for the down payment, I can work 3 jobs to save some money. Well, that's good. But how long you can last for working on this 3 jobs? Can you last for 30 years or 15 years or maybe just 2 years? If you consider all this situation, a lot of the answers is already being apparent for the home buyers to get prepared. So really, how to prepare for a mortgage, how to prepare for home ownership is a much serious consideration, a much serious work and task to take on. So that's something as a consumer to be aware. And then once we really got it mentally, physically, financially get it ready, and then we go talk to the lender to get pre-approval or pre-qualification. Getting into the lender conversation, we need to understand some basics, is what type of a product we're talking about to borrow money. Because of borrow money, what type of a money, how the money being structured, that's also matters. A lot of people heard about a fixed rate mortgage and adjustable mortgage. Well, it's very simple to understand. A fixed rate is a rate never change. In other words, the agreement the lender and the buyer set is a set. So there's no change whatsoever. At adjustable rate, yes, the rate is going to adjustable, but there also has a term how this adjustable cycle is going to begin and end, under what circumstances the rate is going to adjust, and adjust how high and how low. So those type of things are also spelled out in the agreement. Let's look at some specifics. I want everybody's eye on this two fixed rate mortgage terms. That's just to give us insight what we're looking at it, how we're looking at it, and what's the impact that this mortgage is going to bring in our reality life. So let's look at the first and the second, those two options. When you look at it, that's basically is the year term is different. First one is 15-year mortgage. The second one is 30-year payment, 30-year mortgage. And then you look at the right side, the base principal borrow money is exactly the same. So that's how we do the comparison. Well, what is the real interesting part is, you look at it, everything else is almost the same, generated from a base point is interest rate. The base point interest rate, 15 years of 4.5%, and the 30-year is 5%. Well, based upon this 4.5 and 5% interest rate, look at it, how the result coming out. First of all, your monthly principal and the interest payment, your monthly payment is quite different. One is $765, the other one is $537. Same money, same amount of money, $100,000, but because the interest rate is different, your monthly payment will be different. Well, the second thing is, the second interesting piece is, what's the really cost, the real cost of this $100,000? $100,000 is not a cost. $100,000 is just the base, the principal, the dollar in, dollar out. There's no change. But what is really changing is interest generated interest payment. That is going to be a different. Look at this 15-year at a 4.5. The real cost for the whole 15 years, the interest payment add up together is only $37,699. By looking at the 30-year, you look at it, that's almost what? Almost. Not quite, but almost like a 2.5, well, over 2.5, almost three times, right? So by 5%, your monthly payment is $537, and the 30-year whole time, entire time, you're going to have $93,256, the total interest payment. So tell me the question, I throw this question on the floor is, when you look at this, if you are the consumer, which one you want to pick? Under what circumstances you would like to pick? I pause for a second to let everybody. I know we don't see everybody in the room because it's a webinar thing. So we don't see everybody. It cannot be open floor for answer that question. But I can tell you is, there's no absolutely right mortgage or wrong mortgage here. It depends. So let me throw something at you. If your income is $2,000 per month, at this moment, which one you prefer to pick? I would say majority of the people probably will agree we will pick 30-year mortgage. Is that right? Because that payment makes sense. Even the interest look higher, but the payment makes sense. In reality, we are looking at what makes sense. It doesn't mean we always want to saving money, but the saving money also compared to, in this scenario, we also need to look at it and make sense. It's not because of saving money, we may ended up we have no life, and that doesn't make sense whatsoever. So if you make $2,000 per month, your payment is going to be $800 per just for mortgage, and you got to also consider interest, insurance, and property tax. All those add up together. We will look at it how much money we have left after paying out the housing. So that's why I said what makes sense. Now, same scenario, same the two mortgages here. I'm going to throw another scenario here is if your monthly income is $5,000, what is your pick? Well, if that's the case, I would agree with everybody else in this room. We're going to pick the 15-year. Why? Because we have a plenty resources, and that resources, the income, can definitely satisfy this need for pick up a shorter term and lower interest rate and save money. So with that, that's just to open it up to give you some idea when you comparing a certain loan product, and you really looking at it, not just the shopping for the interest rate. You got to look at it, the overview, the whole package, to thinking about I achieving this homeownership. Even within the short term, I may pay a higher interest, but it makes sense to helping me to achieving the long-term alternative goal. So which one is be more reasonable? Now, who are making all those mortgages? You know, we talk about the specific 30-year, 15-year mortgages. Who are those people are making mortgages? To be honest, nowadays, everybody can make mortgages. Everybody, literally everybody can be a lender. Why? Because mortgage business is a quite lucrative business, but also is a very risky business. So if everybody has a plenty asset or asset-based money source, people probably will thinking to get into the mortgage business, because mortgage business, once you get into the mortgage business, establish it, your money flow is kind of keep going. So that's why it's quite a lucrative business here. Everybody can get to become a lender. But as a consumer, we do need, and especially for the people initially just beginner to get into this homeownership and get into the lending business, we need to keep our ears up and really be cautious about what we get into it. So technically, to be a little bit conservative may not be a bad thing. That's why we compare the interest rate and compare the term. We would like to say for long term, for the fixed rate will be much better than the other creative loan structures or program. Of course, the other creative like adjustable rate loan is not something bad. A lot of people say, well, adjustable rate is a bad loan. I cannot take that because they adjust on me, so I'm going to go crazy after that, and the loan goes crazy. No, every loan has their own mechanism and run its own course. The only thing is we need to understand what it is. If we understand what it is, there's no fear, because you already got the fear is under the control. You know, even they change what type of thing they are going to change into it. So there's no uncertainty. Once we take uncertainty away, you can easy to manage. So that's something to have everybody take away. Also, talking about mortgage product, literally in the market right now, we're talking about two main categories. One is government loans, which is government agencies issue the loan or back up the loan or insure the loan or guarantee the loan. So basically it's a money source. Money source is coming from a government agency, which is USDA Department, Federal Veterans Department, Transportation Department, and all those departments, they organize the Federal Housing Association, those departments, they organize money, and the HUD, they organize and the money, and that's called government loans. But there are also a private section. Private section is very popular. Everybody knows it's Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac. Those are private section. But the private section is also highly regulated under government agencies. So don't forget that, because mortgage business is a very risky business and also highly regulated business. So as a consumer, especially majority consumer, don't understand the ins and outs about it. So we as a lender, as the industry itself, we are responsible for protect the consumer. So, but for the consumer side, we do need to understand who are the real lenders and what the category they belong to, so we can really understand how we talking about what do we get. Here is a few things. We talk about FHA loans, which is the the first-time home buyer loan since early 1970s. Until today, they are still considered is for first-time home buyer loans. Why? Because this loan program has been reformed and redesigned, restructured, and incorporate a lot of our other nuances to compensate consumers' needs. So for that, nowadays, the first-time home buyers are not only the clientele this program service. There are other clientele this program can satisfy, like impaired credit, like a derogatory records. This program can compensate for that or tolerate for that. Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, those are semi-government enterprises, sponsored enterprises, but it pretty much is a private section. But because these guys are set up the lending industry standard, so, and also the loans are trading in the market, so the regulation are quite standard is benchmarked. So pretty much is we have a set measurement for who qualify on what. So this is our more cookie cutters. And then there's other, we call it is portfolio loan. That's really private money, which belongs to each lender themselves or certain groups. The money is privately owned, and the design the loan program based upon the standard, but they can carve out certain outstanding features to meet certain people's needs. So that's why once you stepped into the lending business, you can see your choices is like ocean. You can have so many choices and so many resources can pull. Down payment is the same thing. Down payment normally used to be the government agencies is dominant for the down payment, but nowadays is not so anymore. So government is still a chunk of the piece for down payment system, but a nonprofit, which is like San Pablo EDC, and also for-profit like lenders itself, or some business like a trustee companies, they can also provide a down payment system program to fitting in this space, helping homeowners to achieve the homeownership. So overall, the choices is there, but you definitely need to keep a mind open, ears open, and really understanding what you are going to have and how to discuss the terms with the lender. On this piece, I do want to, since we are not talking much about the other piece, but the other piece is also very important for lender to make a decision on qualification. I highly suggested everybody need to read your own credit report, understanding your own credit, and also understanding your score and the score movement. Those can help you to get prepared for the homeownership. And this piece is very, very important. Here has some resources for the consumers to know where to find your credit report, which is this annualcreditreport.com, and also how to get a credit score for a small fee. Those are the good resources to start with, because when we really prepare for homeownership, where we start from saving. We need to organize the money. That's the first. Organize what we have. And then from what we have, and then let's to find out what we can have potentially in the future. Well, what we can have in the future to organize this is involved budgeting, involved planning, involved to know our debt, know our obligation, know our financial behavior. So credit piece are very, very important. And then from there, you build your path. Once your saving take off or launched, that's just to take you towards they get ready to ask for a mortgage, because you already start the down payment piece or the own investment part. And then also involved how you cover the transaction cost in the end. So technically, from beginning to prepare the homeownership is very, very important. And that's set a path, the right toning for you to achieve eventually. Talking to your lender to get what you need and want is also very important. You need to find somebody you can trust. You can trust not only the person talking to you, you also need to trust the overall, because a lot of times you may talk to the person is very nice, but the company, the behind the curtain, because the money is not coming from that person individually, that's coming from the company. So the company has to be very reputable and can strongly support this type of transaction. The reason I ask that is saying that is everybody knows in the Bay Area, earlier this year, there's a couple of Silicon Valley banks are being bankrupted. Before they bankrupted, did you know that their lending product is outstanding? The Silicon Valley, the Citizen Bank, they quoted people for home mortgage for $1 million loan. The interest rate can be 2% in this year, early this year, before they bankrupt. That's how they bankrupt, because they are go way ahead of themselves. They try to entice the consumer come to their bank to do business with them, but they set up a very unrealistic role. Well, for the consumer, we don't know much. So we thought, wow, 2% versus everybody else offer 6% interest rate, 2% is gold. We go after that. But after that, well, there's no after that, because they cannot fund the loan. So that will lead a lot of people actually lost the opportunity to own the home ownership. So that's something to give us a warning is we are not only talking to the person, we got to look at the whole package and to find the trustworthy source. And also take time to read the disclosure, to ask a question. Don't be afraid to ask questions. And especially something you have no knowledge about it. And just ask upfront to say what it is. Explain to me. Even you know or feel you know something, is still ask for clarification, because it's never too bad to know something clearly. And that will save a lot of headaches in the back. There are some things I do want to mention, give you something for down payment. Since we talked about the down payment, I want to give you a taste of what the down payment can look like. We talked about the down payment can be a grant or can be a loan. So a lot of people say, well, if it's a grant, that's going to be too good to be true. Nobody giving free money. Well, guess what? They are. They are programs giving free money. The only thing is you need to find the right sources. So technically, I want to show some here what we are doing right now, which is one of the very few banks have the grant giving out. This is our BMO currently in Bay Area, 5 counties around the Bay. If you purchase a house in Alameda, Contra Costa, San Francisco, San Mateo, Santa Clara counties, in those 5 counties, you can actually get this up to 16,000 grant. So this is the one way for the home buyer to really saving the money, because this is the money is out about for the consumer to grab. I will explain a little bit about what this grant is being structured, how you can qualify the grant, or how you qualify for the down payment. First and foremost, take the down payment as a separate loan from your mortgage, from the lender. Even you get money from the same lender, for example, if you come in and ask for a mortgage from a BMO, the BMO gave you a first mortgage, but also I'm going to qualify you for this grant or this down payment program, and they are totally separate. So their criteria is separate. Let's look at this structure is, I said is that this program can offer up to 16,000. But this 16,000 actually is 3 independent grant snowballing together to get there. So the first layer, what we call is majority minority census tract, which is in California, 95% of the census, the residential areas are majority minority. What's the meaning for that is we draw a square measurement. In that square, how diversity resident they are. So by living in California, we know every every residential area are very diverse. So a lot of those are minorities, either Black, Hispanic, Asian, you name it. So that's why we call it is majority minority census tract. If you fall in that, you're going to qualify the 6,500 right off the bat. I do not ask more questions. Well, how to qualify that is basically we run the census tract, the geocoding. The geocoding will tell us if your minority census tract is over 50%, which is 95% of them are over 50%, and you got the 6,500. There's no other qualification about it. Then you move to the second individual one, which is the buyer itself is a minority. If you are minority yourself, you got the second one. And then the third one, so that's how the snowballing. So your first layer, second layer, that's give you the 13,000. And then you roll to the last layer, which is you have is low moderate income person, and also in the low moderate income census tract, and that's gave you extra 3,000. So altogether it's a 16,000. So this is how we really leverage the money source for the home buyers to really qualify for get money for the down payment or closing cost. This type of money is totally free. There's no tie to the collateral or no tie to recourses, nothing. If you qualify upfront, the money is going to be issued out at the closing and done deal. And also there's no recording for this. So why the bank is doing that? A lot of the banks are designed this called a special credit program to helping home buyers, consumers to achieve home buying. That's what the effort the financial institution gave a pledge to the local community. With that said, I'm pretty much cover today's information. I gave the stage back to Septi, and then if you have any questions, let me know. You can use the chat or QA to tell me, if are there any questions.
Thank
Septi,
you for, yes,
yeah,
please go ahead.
back to you.
Yes, thank you so much for this wonderful presentation. So, and I would like to present on additional resources for low and moderate income home buyers. One of the first-time home buyer down payment assistance programs I would like to introduce you to is the WISH. So WISH provides up to $29,000 in down payment or closing cost assistance. Funds are awarded as a 4-to-1 match. No payments due. 20% is forgiven for every year you reside in the property, and after 5 years, 100% of rent is forgiven. Funds are available on a first come, first served basis with a purchase contract. So for the qualifying criteria for WISH, family income must not exceed 80% of the HUD income limit. Borrower must be a first-time home buyer. Borrower must occupy the property as primary residence. Borrower must complete 8 hours of HUD-approved first-time homebuyer education. Debt to housing expense ratio must not exceed 35% of gross household income, and single-family detached homes, condominiums, and townhomes are eligible. The second down payment assistance program I would like to introduce you to is SPLASH. SPLASH stands for San Pablo Loan Assistance for Sustainable Housing. The mission of this program is to help low-income individuals and families become first-time home buyers in the city of San Pablo. So how the SPLASH is different? The loan made through the SPLASH program will be deferred payment loans. No payment will be required until the end of the term unless the property is sold or otherwise transferred. Loan amount is up to 20% of the purchase price, not to exceed $100,000. Loan interest is the greater of shared appreciation or 3% per annum simple interest, and the length of the loan is up to 30 years. For the qualifying criteria for SPLASH, the individual should be the first-time home buyer who is seeking to purchase a home in the city of San Pablo. Also, borrower and borrower's household must meet income requirements. Borrower must be able to provide a minimum of 2.5% of the sales price as a down payment, and loan funds may only be used for down payment assistance or non-recurring closing costs. We give the priority to first responders, teachers, and veterans. So with this information about the programs in mind, if you are interested in applying for either or both of these programs, the first step is to complete the interest and eligibility form. From there, we will follow up with you for the next steps. And you can find the forms on our website or scan the QR code shared on the screen. Also, please feel free to contact me for further details. We will have another webinar being presented in Spanish on November 14th. If you know anyone who would benefit from this, please make a referral and ask them to register. You can register scanning the QR code shared on the screen or visit our website calendar. And thank you for attending our webinar. And once again, thank you to our presenter, Emma. We hope this webinar provided you with valuable information. The recording will be available on our website as well as some of the resources and information presented today. Please feel free to contact any of the presenters with any questions you may have. I'm not sure how much, we have 5 minutes for question and answers. So now we are going to the question and answers in the chat box. So Aurora, do we have any questions on the chat box?
No, we don't at this time.
Okay, so if there is no questions, we have reached the end of the webinar. I hope this webinar was beneficial for you and for all your questions got answered. If you have any more questions, please reach out to me or Emma. And thank you again, everyone. And I hope you all have a wonderful evening. Bye.
Bye-bye, everybody.